Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and the rest of you. And this is Wednesday, July 18th, and you are tuned into Battleground. Well, I hope you're enjoying this beautiful summer. It is summer in southern Ontario, that's for sure, and I'm sure it is that way elsewhere. And speaking of sunny skies, potentially some good news emanating from across the pond in the UK. As you know, the head honcho of Rebel Media, Ezra, he is in London covering the Tommy trial. And I think we should kick off the show with that. In fact, why don't we go to one of Ezra's most recent reports, and I'll give you a more immediate updating from some of Ezra's tweets, because they have wrapped for the day over in London. So if I can call on Mr. Producer to go to Ezra's tweet. Ezra's
here for the Rebel Media. I am outside the Royal Courts of Justice on the Strand in Westminster, which is really just a neighborhood of London. Three of the most senior judges in the entire United Kingdom, including the Lord Chief Justice himself, are presiding over the appeal. Tommy Robinson has four lawyers. On the other side, a lawyer for the Attorney General of the United Kingdom. We haven't heard from him yet. We'll hear that after this short break. The two big headlines coming out of the case today so far are, number one, Tommy is not just appealing his sentence, but rather the conviction itself, and he's actually appealing his Canterbury conviction from a year ago. The second is the shocking treatment of Tommy by the authorities, especially in prison, refusing to allow him to meaningfully confer with his own lawyers. The details were just amazing. I'm pleased to say that the judges are allowing us to live tweet from the courtroom, subject only to a publication ban covering a rape gang trial in Leeds. So if you want a lot of detail minute by minute, I encourage you to follow me on Twitter, or we'll post this and other videos as we make them at tommytrial.com.
Well, there you have it, folks. And of course, we have more recent news because they have wrapped for the day in London. And Ezra has been tweeting out that the Chief Justice says they have a complicated task before them. I'm not really sure why it's that complicated, given the facts of the matter and given what's being stated at this trial, and given that, remember, his arrest dates back to, I believe it was May 25th, when Tommy was first picked up outside that courtroom where that Muslim rape gang was going on trial. So it's kind of funny when they talk about a complicated task. It almost sounds to me like, well, we're the state, we're the chief justices. We really don't know the law that well, and this is being thrust upon us in only 2.5 months. So my spidey senses are kind of tingling there. And as Ezra notes as well, they hope to complete it. That's this complicated task before the end of this month, July. That I agree with Ezra here. He has tweeted that this seems excessively slow, and that you'd think if they have to take that much time, why not grant Tommy bail in the meantime? I mean, I don't think Tommy is a flight risk. I don't think he is a danger to society at large. So I guess what I'm saying here, folks, is that there seems to be a little bit of vindictiveness here on the behalf of the British justice system when it comes to Tommy Robinson, that we really don't see being applied to anyone else. Far from it, actually. We see with certain individuals committing certain crimes, the justice system bending over backwards to the point of leniency. Why is there this double standard when it just comes to somebody who is the messenger? And I think really what we've learned, and if you're honest about it, and much of the mainstream media in Britain is not honest about this, it's that Tommy is a political prisoner. I really believe that, and I think that's a disgrace, especially for a country with such a rich history of freedom and rights as the United Kingdom. So that is what we have on Tommy. It looks like we won't hear anything concrete until the end of the month. I hope, because his shoddy treatment has been highlighted in this court, and the authorities should be absolutely ashamed of themselves that they've treated Tommy this way. I hope that's going to end. We have now shed some light on this, and at least in the meantime, I know the end of July, that's literally less than 2 weeks away. Tommy has a more comfortable run of it and is not denied his basic rights while in prison. In the meantime, here's a few things you can do. Number one, you can contribute to Tommy's legal fund. That's TommyTrial.com. And all the money going there is indeed going to Tommy's trial. Second, there is SaveTommy.com. Sorry, Mr. Producer, what is the proper, is it SaveTommy.com or TommyTrial.com for the Tommy Legal Fund? TommyTrial.com, indeed, I had it right the first time. And of course, you can get your free Tommy ringtone at TommyRingtone.com. And if you want to help Rebel report on this issue, you can make a donation. That's a separate fund from the money that we're raising from Tommy. And finally, if you want, you can tweet #FreeTommy and get your opinions out there. And let's see what is going on in the UK right now, according to our viewers. Synthworks says, I ain't paying no lawyers. Well, the problem is, Synthworks, if you don't pay lawyers, especially in a trial where the Chief Justice is calling it a complicated task, can you imagine a lay person? Could you imagine, and Tommy's a bright guy. Could you imagine him defending himself in something that the Chief Justice calls a complicated task? You need lawyers, and you need good lawyers. You need sharks in a trial like this. I mean, that's why we're raising this money. It's not to make a buck off it. It's to help Tommy get justice and get out of jail. And let's see. BMTV writes, Tommy can die in jail. You're probably right. I think that's why he is in solitary. He has an incredible number of enemies in prison that would consider that a badge of honor to harm or do something even worse to Tommy. Let's all pray that nothing like that does happen. It hasn't happened. But it doesn't excuse the fact that the people, the guards, the people running the prison are denying Tommy his rights. That is egregious, and it shouldn't be happening. And let's see, we have Miss Green Eyes X, the government should be ashamed of themselves. Yeah, and you know something, Miss Green Eyes? I don't think the British government realized what they were getting into. I thought, if we go back to May 25th, when those, I think it was 7 police officers, if memory serves, descended upon Tommy and hustled him into a paddy wagon, and in a matter of minutes, found guilty, bang, contempt of court, in a prison. I think they thought this was going to be the end of it. And lo and behold, around the world, there has been free Tommy protests. And in the UK, there's been some very vocal protests about freeing Tommy. And I think it dawned on them that, my goodness, instead of shutting down this busybody, this motor mouth, this messenger, we're potentially turning him into a martyr. And that's not going to serve the government for its own selfish needs. And CP Nationals writes, we will never be silenced by our corrupt government. Good point, CP. As Ezra said, he thinks that Canada's maybe 5 years, 10 years behind the UK. I mean, when you see things like M103, the motion banning Islam, and the motion banning, Freudian slip there, folks, the motion banning racism, but especially Islamophobia. And you see how that's being interpreted in Canada. I think this is the proverbial thin edge of the wedge in terms of shutting down the opinions of people who have, shall we say, impolite opinions of certain groups, certain faiths. So let's watch that. And I have a clarification from Mr. Producer. It is actually SaveTommy.com for the legal fund. So forgive me, folks, SaveTommy.com. That is money for Tommy's legal fund. There it is there. And for Ezra's expenses, it is TommyTrial.com. That is TommyTrial.com if you want to contribute to Ezra's expenses. That's a completely separate fundraising initiative on behalf of Rebel. We are not taking money from SaveTommy.com. Every single penny is going towards Tommy's legal defense there. And the reason why we need contributions and we need to ask, rely upon your generosity is that it's very expensive to go to London. I mean, booking a flight in the last minute, which was the case in this scenario, hotel rooms, even cabs, it is very expensive. And that is why we're relying on the generosity of our viewers. And you know what, folks, you always come through. So if you can give anything, $1 to $5, it all helps. And I just saw a comment from David. Canada is not crude, get out and protest. Well, we've been covering protests. We covered, my cameraman Efren and I, we went down to the British consulate at Bay and College last month. And there was a group of, it was several dozen people. And, you know, again, people will say, well, why aren't there hundreds there? Well, it was a Friday around 1:30, if memory serves. So many people are working, just trying to, make ends meet. But I'll tell you, the people that were there, including war veterans, who had a lot to say. I mean, they were very vocal. They were very intelligent about their support for Tommy. And again, like I said, here is something that I believe the UK powers that be thought would go away on May 25th. And instead, they have created a monster of Frankensteinian proportions. And let's see. Elos X, so much of us back, Tommy. It's just a shame so many feel scared to say so. And you raise a very good point as well, as we've brought to your attention on this show previously. Just imagine, not so much in Canada, but in the UK, 900 police officers. 900 police officers not patrolling the streets, not going after rape gangs, not showing a sense of public security, but rather at their desk, looking into a computer like this and searching for any kind of what they deem to be irresponsible or hateful tweet or social media posting. And they typically find people who are just venting or expressing an opinion that goes contrary to the politically correct, polite society of Britain. And the next thing you know, it's usually 3 or 4 in the morning. I don't know why they do that other than absolute pure intimidation and scare tactics. They're knocking on your door and it's, hello, did you send this out on the social media? And then you've got some trouble. I mean, even if you're not found guilty, there's an economic penalty, because going back to lawyers and legal fees, you need a lawyer to defend yourself or you're screwed. Trust me on that, folks. And so even if they can't get you by the letter of the law, they will economically discipline you for having a contrary opinion. And again, that is more egregious behavior from a country that should be all about freedom and rights. And Terry Winstanley writes, free Tommy if he has been denied his legal rights in prison. That is illegal. Free Tommy and ban Islam and the Quran and mosques in the UK. Well, the ban on Islam and the Quran and mosques in the UK, that's never going to happen. And really, nor should it. I think, here's some radicalism from me if you want, folks. How about treating everybody equally under the law? How about not showing special treatment and special privileges for certain groups? And I think that's what's going on. And to your first point about Tommy being denied legal rights, again, once he gets out and once this is behind him, I guess it's up to him to pursue that. And once again, that's going to be a very costly proposition. As they say, it's very tough to fight City Hall. And let's see. Now here's an interesting one. Mickey Monkchunk, all Tommy haters are pedophiles. Well, I wouldn't say that. And you have to be careful with language like that, folks. I mean, this reminds me of Elon Musk and the Thailand cave rescue for those young soccer players, where he had developed this little mini submarine, and one of the experts on site basically said it was really a publicity stunt. And Musk tweeted in response that this fellow was I think the words were pedo guy, implying that he's a pedophile. To me, that's actionable. And here we are. Elon Musk apologizes for calling Thai cave rescuer a pedo. That's the first step in the right direction for Mr. Musk, because that is certainly an actionable thing. And again, it comes down to this. We don't have to resort to ad hominem attacks on those we oppose. We just have to state the facts. So let us not play that kind of game. And let's go. Real Men Fish writes, if Tommy was a confessed, convicted terrorist like Omar Khadr, Trudeau would give him a pass and $10.5 million. Well, I hope we're kind of conflating two separate issues here, but I'm really glad, Real Men Fish, that you bring this up. This payment to Khadr was made last summer, if I believe, last July, I think, and let us always keep this top of mind, because next year, of course, is a federal election for Canada, and we shouldn't forget about these kind of payments and other payments to people like Omar Khadr, who is a convicted terrorist. And don't forget, not just a payment, but a public apology. Can anyone remember if Trudeau cried for that one? I know he cries when he gives apologies to natives and to gays, and he cried meeting a Broadway, cast of a play backstage. I have no idea why he cried there. He cried when he was given a photograph of his father. Did he cry at that apology too? And I'm always still so miffed that the ostensible reason that the Liberals say they gave that big juicy check of $10.5 million was the fact that, to fight this in court, it would be, in the tens of millions, maybe even the hundreds of millions, and perhaps we're going to lose. It's funny, folks, isn't it, when it comes to Omar Khadr, that the Liberals, the tax and spend Liberals, suddenly become fiscal conservatives with our money. Suddenly they're worried about the bottom line and the budget, the deficit, and doing the right thing financially. So, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't buy that. And I would say this, being a fiscal conservative myself, that even if this was a fool's errand, I think on a matter of principle, they should have fought that hammer and tong, this idea of giving that that sewer rat, any compensation. By the way, am I going to get condemned for calling Omar Khadr a sewer rat? I know, if Desmond Cole's tuning in, he didn't like it when Mayor John Tory referred to a couple of gangbangers as sewer rats when they shot at some little girls on a playground. sewer rats have feelings too. So to the sewer rat community out there, I imagine I owe you an apology. And I owe you one, but you're not going to get it. And let's see. Oh, I'm having some, technical difficulties. Maybe one of my Mr. Producers will come in and. Oh no, it's back. It's working again. It's just me, folks. By the way, I refer to my crew now as Mr. Producer because they don't want their names being used and they don't want their extracurricular activities being talked about. I think we have a bunch of people at the Rebel.media that are in the witness protection program, folks. I mean, I'm even in the phone book. I don't know what these guys are afraid of. I only use their first name too, but things seem to be working. So let's find something else to talk about on Tommy, if I can. And I think I saw something up here. Synthworks says, sewer rat is acceptable. Okay, you have redeemed yourself, Synthworks. And Real Man Fish again says, also going into the next election, let's not forget Sergeant Spear and his widow and children. Indeed, remember one of the guys putting him back together, losing his life for him as well. And we have a super chat from Andy, £2. Thank you so much for your generosity, Andy. And Sadiq Khan baby balloon to fly every day over Luton. Now, is that an actual statement of fact, Andy, or is that something you hope for? It's something I hope for, and therefore I do hope it's a statement of fact. But if you have something recent on that crowdfunder for the Sadiq Khan balloon, and there it is, this never gets old. And I hope it's that big, because judging by the perspective, that would make the Sadiq Khan baby balloon about 5 times bigger than the so-called gigantic Donald Trump balloon, which was actually between something like 15 and 20 feet tall, bouncy castle size. And let us see what we have here. Michael Sephiroth, hope I pronounced your name correctly, Michael. What are the facts behind moving Tommy from the initial prison to a fully Muslim and grooming gang member inmates? Great question. And when Ezra continues his reporting, maybe that will come up in the trial. Maybe it won't. I would say again, this is the state using its power of intimidation. I can't think of any good reason. Like I said, it's not as though Tommy is a risk to society or anyone else for that matter. And we got another super chat, I believe. Let me just try to. Okay, from Nigel, £2 again. Thank you again, Nigel, for your generosity. You are cursed if you say Jesus is God's son, and that is according to the Quran. You know what? I don't know if that is a line or not from the Quran. I'll have to look into it. It's kind of funny though, because I know in Islam, Jesus is indeed a revered prophet. So could be true, couldn't, I don't know. And we have from Wayne McLaughlin at Bob Zembico. We don't all put up with Justin Trudeau. A large portion of Canadians despises Justin Traitor Trudeau. I can't fault you there. From what I've seen, there is a huge block of people that don't like what Trudeau and the Liberals are doing. I'm more worried, folks, about apathy going into the next election. That is people that are still looking at the issues based on optics as opposed to the facts. And those people that still buy into, he's a good-looking guy, he's got nice hair, great abs, and they're really not drilling down any deeper than that. That's what really scares me about the chances of this regime being reelected again. It's a possibility, who knows. But, I've always agreed with Ezra's take on what happened in the last federal election. And I think this, speaks to some hope for those who support regime change in Ottawa. And that is, it wasn't so much the Liberals doing outstandingly well or the Conservatives doing outstandingly bad, but it was about the NDP cratering in the province of Quebec. Remember, going back 2 elections ago, the NDP had stunning gains. And I think one of the big reasons they cratered in Quebec was a fatal flaw by their former leader, Thomas Mulcair, who, as you recall, he went to bat for that woman in Mississauga who was trying to get her citizenship sworn in wearing the niqab, the full face concealing Islamic garment. And that doesn't play all that well in Quebec. Remember, going back last year, Quebec passed the so-called anti-face mask bill, and this was by a Liberal government in Quebec. So I think Mulcair died on this issue. I guess he's sticking to his principles. I don't know what principle he's standing up for in terms of advocating that somebody wears a facial disguise in public, especially at a citizenship swearing in. But he did stick to his principle, and he paid the price. And you know what? We're paying the price now. We have the Justin Trudeau Liberals who are proving with every passing month that they remain the not ready for primetime players. And like I said, let's see if what happens in Battleground Quebec come the next election. And it is one thing you can say about Quebec basically on any election is that it is an incredibly fickle province. They swing back and forth. So let's see what else we have. I think we might have another super chat. Help needed, £5. Thank you for the £5 donation. Help needed. Can Tommy go into politics with his record? For me, he should be immigration minister. Oh, can you imagine? I don't know what the rules are in the UK if a criminal conviction precludes you from running. I don't think it would. I guess if you've served your time, you've paid your debt to society, I don't think it would. But Tommy has had his experience in politics. I don't think from when I've spoken to him, it's what he wants to do in the future. It might be wrong about that. Maybe things change. I think he likes being a commentator. I think he likes doing the social media thing of calling BS of what's happening in his country. And maybe he's getting more attention that way. And certainly that would be the case right now, thanks to his incarceration. Certainly his story, his issue is getting out there. And so I think we've pretty much covered off the Tommy trial for now, folks. If you want the most recent updates, please go on to Ezra Levent's Twitter feed. He's got all the latest. And as of now, just to recap, if you just joined us late, the court is out for the day across the pond. And the Chief Justice says that they have a complicated task before them, and that they hope to complete this task before the end of July. And as Ezra says, that seems excessively slow, and you think they'd at least grant Tommy bail in the meantime. I agree. I don't think Tommy's a risk, and especially since it's come out in the court about how shoddy his treatment has been in prison. That would be a way of making amends, don't you think? So what else do we have? Well, Trudeau came up in our discussion and just announced maybe 2 hours ago this morning, there's a bit of a cabinet shuffle. Trudeau is realigning the deck. I guess it's in advance of going into the election for next year. And look who we have. We have Bill Blair, an MP who was not a cabinet minister, and they've created a new position for him. By the way, I should say that it's not really much of a shuffle. All the senior cabinet ministers remain, Morneau, Freeland, Sajjan, Bryson, they're all there. But Bill Blair is now, get this, he has the newly created role of Minister of Border Security and Organized Crime Reduction. And maybe that's saying the same thing with two different words given who's coming over the border these days. I got to tell you, folks, This doesn't fill my sails with optimism. I'm not a big Bill Blair fan, going back to when he was the chief of police in Toronto. And I'll tell you why. I think it was, I'm going by memory here, and I'm only going to be paraphrasing, not using direct quotes. But I remember Bill Blair having a press conference as the chief of police, and I believe the press conference was about the sentencing coming up for a criminal who had killed a Toronto police officer while on duty. And what got my spidey senses tingling greatly was when Bill Blair said words to the effect of, we can't just be concerned about the pursuit of justice, we have to be concerned about social justice as well. And I went, no, you're the chief of police of the largest police force in the country. You're about law and order, you're about preventing crime. What are you talking about, social justice? This is the kind of crapola we hear on the campuses of U of T and Ryerson, and other bastions of social justice warriorism. To hear the chief of police speak like this. So he played his cards, I think, with that one statement. And suddenly, Bill Blair, who has a soft spot for social justice, whatever that means, and if anyone can offer a definition, I would love to hear it. He's now in the newly created role of Minister of Border Security and Organized Crime Reduction. Are you happy about that, folks? Please weigh in, and I shall get to your comments. And a super tweet here from Steep6, $5. Thank you very much for that. No comment, though. So I'll just say thank you so much for the $5. I do appreciate it. And let's see, go on. So anyways, if you'd like to weigh in on the Trudeau cabinet shuffle and your opinions of Bill Blair in this, what should be an important role, please have your say. It should also be noted that one of my Mr. Producers, whose name I cannot say, pointed out to me, because he has an eagle eye, that with the shakeup in the cabinet, it is now 18 men and 17 women. Uh-oh. What happened to the 50-50 split? And why is it that if it's an odd number, it's automatically a male MP? I mean, remember Justin Trudeau, when he was asked about this, the 50-50 gender quota cabinet, it's because it's 2015. Well, I guess because it's 2018, the 2015 rules don't apply. And do you know what else really irked me about that? When you think about it, folks, if you're simply, making the cabinet up based on gender, well, maybe there's so much female talent there that they should actually be more than 50% of the cabinet ministers. So in a way, sticking to that 50-50 split to begin with could have been discriminatory against females. Who's to say? So, so much for the gender equity cabinet. I guess we'll have to bring that up to him on the campaign trail. And so let's see what, okay then. Bear with me. Okay, I guess we're getting more comments about Tommy. Strong Exorcist says the punishment doesn't fit the crime. Even if there was a crime, Tommy is a political prisoner. Well, Strong Exorcist, I agree with you there. And if the crime was indeed contempt of court, I think what Ezra has done on so many occasions in this space has shown that the precedents for contempt of court, and we're talking about repeat violators, nobody got 13 months in jail. Nobody. I mean, it is so over the line. All right, and we have Mr. Producer number 1 tells me we have 2 super chats, and I'm struggling to find them. And maybe we can have one of the trained broadcast professionals come in, because as you know, my feeling about machines, folks, is they are out to screw you. So that's kind of frozen up in the meantime. Anyways, welcome more thoughts on Tommy and more of your opinions on the cabinet shuffle, which is no longer a gender equity cabinet anymore. And from Eric Heaps, and not one solicitor will defend him. This is how deep it goes. Well, you know, he does have a good lawyer, but you're quite right. Ezra has outlined in the past that when we started shopping for lawyers, how tough this was to get good legal talent to represent Tommy Robinson. And these weren't schleppers. These were guys getting, you know, 1,000 pounds an hour. But it was too much of a political hot potato for them to take on. I mean, they wouldn't tell us that. They would say some kind of legalese gobbledygook. And so that, again, leads me to believe that he is a political prisoner at the end of the day. And thanks to my trained broadcast professional that came in while you were looking at the Save Tommy graphic there, I can now read the 2 super chats. And from Nigel again, £2. Thank you, Nigel. Free Jeremy Bamber, now 33 years of injustice. I will have to research that, Nigel, to give you an informed opinion, if that is possible. And from Bob Bartos, $2. Thank you, Bob. Canada sucks again. Thanks, Justin. Well, you know what? You can always get your Make Canada Great Again caps. We sell those here at the Rebel. And whenever we have a Rebel live event, it is so nice to see those red Make Canada Great Again caps in the audience, because Canada shouldn't suck, and it doesn't deserve to suck. This is the greatest country in the world, despite who's in the seat of power in Ottawa right now. And let's go on. Jason Shardlow says Tommy does not deserve jail. And I would agree with you that even if he is in contempt of court, he certainly doesn't deserve 13 months based on precedent in the UK. That is overkill. And and yeah, it looks like it's all Tommy all the time. No one wants to talk about the cabinet shuffle. Aside from PKE Racing, Junkie Ottawa is a city of leeches. Yeah, I suppose that is where so many of our tax dollars end up. But it always goes to good endeavors, doesn't it, folks? Like $10.5 million to a convicted terrorist. And okay. David Jeffrey Spetch says, laughing out loud, 17 versus 18. I normally would comment, but since it is Trudeau being attacked, I'll just sit back and laugh, Menzies. And laugh you should, because he is being, what's that phrase again? Hoisted on his own petard. I hope, you know, in an upcoming press conference that he's taken to task on this non-50-50 split anymore. And don't let him off with, well, it's an odd number. We really should push for the that extra MP to be female. Wouldn't that be part of Justin and his feminist ideology coming to the fore? And all right. Okay. All right. So moving right along, what else do we have here? Okay, let's lighten it up a little bit, if that's possible. Have you heard about a supermodel? Her name is Mara Martin. Well, you probably haven't heard about her until today, and we're going to run a clip which will show why suddenly everybody in the world, it seems, at least in the fashion business, is talking about her. Let's check that out. Mara Martin.
She's the swimsuit model creating a big splash for breastfeeding her baby on the runway. 30-year-old Mara Martin rocked a metallic gold bikini in the Sports Illustrated swimsuit runway show in Miami. But getting just as much attention is her 5-month-old daughter, Aria, nursing while wearing headphones to protect her little ears from the loud music. And look, she's wearing her own little bikini bottoms over her diaper. Magazine editor MJ Day told the Today Show that it wasn't planned to go like this.
Mara was holding her baby and was nursing her. I was like, you want to just nurse when you walk down the runway? She was like, I would love to do that.
Take me back to that moment when you step out.
The magazine editor came over to me and said, if you want to continue feeding your baby and walk down the runway, I completely support you.
Social media reaction was swift and mostly supportive. Love this. Mothers are superwomen, and that should be celebrated.
You know, I'm not one of these guys, folks, that gets upset when a woman is breastfeeding in public. And, you know, sometimes nature calls and you're in a restaurant, you're at a shopping mall, and I have absolutely zero problem with that. But why do I get the idea that we're being gamed here, that this was really an elaborate publicity stunt? I mean, I'm reading the newspaper story in The Sun, and Mara says she was pleased to receive so many positive comments, but she questioned why her actions were deemed as newsworthy. Well, I think it's because if you're a supermodel and your job is to spend a couple of minutes strutting on stage, surely there was some other time in which you could have breastfed your baby. I mean, the idea that this just organically came about, that I have to do my strutting of my gold bikini, and Junior needs feeding right now. What a unfortunate coincidence. Oh no, I'm not buying that. In fact, I think it kind of belittles the whole idea of a mother breastfeeding her child. It's almost as though she was holding this baby as, I don't know, a Chanel bag. Look at my latest accessory. Yes, it's a designer baby that came out of my womb. Isn't she beautiful? By the way, I can't, you know, you saw that clip, folks. They were doing some fuzzy blue dot effect on her rear end, but she is, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, she was wearing bottoms, right? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, so I don't know why that blue dot was there. Anyways, and that was the back, not the not the front. So you know, it kind of reminds me of I can't remember her name. It was a Liberal MP, I believe, in the House of Commons that brought her child to a vote and breastfed her there. Like I said, not against. Here we are. Karina Gould applauded for breastfeeding son in House of Commons. Now the thing is, wouldn't you think that there's like a quiet place for that? Or wouldn't you think that maybe on this day the husband or the father could take care of the child, or maybe the nanny, or that there could be some other kind of arrangement? Again, I think this is a stunt essentially to you know, say to everybody, look at me, I'm breastfeeding in public, so take that. And again, I think the vast majority of people are not against anyone breastfeeding in public. Every, I don't know, year, 2 years, there's always some story of somebody losing their stuff in a restaurant because, you know, a woman had the temerity to discreetly breastfeed her child. But I think for most of us, that's not the case. But this, come on, this is a publicity stunt, and I would love to see what you have to say about this as well. We have some super chats, folks. So we have one here from Elaine Finn, $15, but no comment. Well, Elaine, please weigh in. But thank you so much for your generous donation. Greatly appreciate that. And Mr. Producer number 1 is saying there is one above that in green. You know, I'm telling you, when they come out here, this computer doesn't freeze, but it is freezing right now. Or maybe it's not registering any body heat from my fingers. Maybe I'm in a stage of zombification because this mouse is not moving along. And I'm so sorry to bore you with my technical difficulties, folks. Click in the window. Okay. I am doing that, Mr. Producer. And how about we... Oh, here we go. Okay. All right, it is working again. Okay. So from John Singus, I hope I pronounced your name right, John. Donation of $2. Thank you so much for that. OLG scribbled on your ticket and then blamed you. Nuts. Wow, that's completely off topic, but I'm happy to discuss this. Yeah, I had an incredible thing happen to me. I think it's going back to last year. and it was about the OLG, which is the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. And I was trying to claim a winning lottery ticket. And it wasn't a jackpot of Lotto Max proportions by any means. It was actually about $1,100. And the way the rules are in Ontario, if you're claiming a lottery win of over 1,000, you have to go through the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. Otherwise, you can get a retailer to pay you up to $999.99. So I go in there. First of all, I couldn't remember the precise retail location where I bought the ticket. I told them it was the town of Richmond Hill, which turned out to be right. And despite the fact that I think there's over 400 municipalities in Ontario, lo and behold, I did get the right municipality for them. That wasn't good enough for the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. So what they did is, not only, folks, did they not pay me my $1,100, I had to, they confiscated the winning ticket as well. Now, this is my property. This is my possession. In law, possession is 9/10 of the law. And but according to OLG regulations, that is apparently above the law. And what this individual is referring to here about the OLG scribbling on my ticket, I actually had to file, I'm not making this up, I had to file a small claims lawsuit to get my money back, money of a winning ticket that I legitimately won. And what came up as evidence is that the ticket was defaced with scribbles. And actually, it was more than just scribbles, it was black magic marker lines that were drawn through all of the ticket. But here's the thing, folks, not a single, micron of ink came from my pen or my marker. It was all the OLG's doing. And I could prove that by their own surveillance camera footage, which showed that I gave them a clean ticket that was completely unmarked. I guess, just to wrap this story, the OLG, as you may know, going back almost 10 years, it was the recipient of the most scathing report ever from a provincial ombudsman in terms of corruption, in terms of fraud, in terms of looking the other way when they came across corruption and fraud. And my experience is this government monopoly, which is only answerable to itself, is still acting in this kind of fashion. Okay, then. All right, then. And so, but thank you for remembering that, because you got my blood boiling again. Okay, oops. And I'm being told by Mr. Producer that there is and Mr. Producer, you are going to have to come back into this studio because okay, then. So the statement is Tommy Robinson is Australia's champion too, and that's a super chat from Steep Six. And Steep Six, I want to thank you for your contribution. And yeah, Tommy Robinson, I would argue, should be a champion for every Western democracy. In fact, Tommy Robinson should be a champion for anyone, anywhere in the world that cares about free speech and freedom of expression and freedom of the press and all the other freedoms that we take for granted, freedoms that are steadily being chipped away at, especially in a country like the UK. And I really hope Ezra is wrong that, Canada is, 10 years away from UK draconianism, but I don't think he is unless we take a stance. Two more at the bottom, I'm told. And Mr. Producer, the computer is completely frozen, so I'm going to have to depend on you to come in here. Oh boy, I'm getting that stink eye. I swear, folks, the computer is completely frozen in a way I've never seen it before. I'll see if we have any chats on the breastfeeding on the catwalk story of Mara Martin. In the meantime, I found this an interesting story yesterday. The Conservative Party pulled an attack ad depicting a black man illegally crossing the border. I don't know if you came across this story, folks. It was an attack ad, and it showed it was all about the porous border that we have in Canada today, and evidently because the individual crossing the border illegally was black, therefore that made this racist. And I don't understand why. I mean, were they supposed to use a white person to avoid the charges of racism? And when you look at a lot of the people that are crossing the border, I don't know, Haitians, Nigerians, we're talking about countries that are indeed predominantly black. So, what is the issue? And I'm sorry to report that the Conservatives caved. Andrew Scheer, well, he did it again. He decided that he was going to capitulate rather than make the case, and that this was completely fine. Or is it? I mean, are these the new rules when it comes to diversity is our strength, except when it isn't? That if you are ever showing someone committing an illicit or illegal act, you cannot show somebody of color. That it has to be, I suppose, a white person. Is this maybe more penance for those of us with this kind of complexion for our supposed white privilege and white supremacy and all that other stuff that the liberal left fires back at us? So again, and by the way, what the tweet showed, what the ad showed, was that the black man was carrying a suitcase, walking over a tweet from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The tweet is rolled out as a carpet entering a broken fence, and the words faith and diversity are visible. To be quite frank, I think that's quite clever. And I don't think and I don't know, do we have, Mr. Producer number 2 and number 3, do we have a image of that tweet that we can put up? Because maybe it's taken down and expunged from history once and for all. But we'll see if we can get that for you. But again, why is it necessarily racist just because the person being shown is black? I don't get that. It's again the sewer rat analogy when Mayor John Tory called those 2 gangbangers shooting at 2 little girls on a playground sewer rats, and Desmond Cole basically charging John Tory with racism because you're equating black people to sewer rats. Well, the fact of the matter, the joke was on Desmond Cole. Mayor Tory didn't even know the race of the shooters at the time. But again, sewer rats have feelings. From Flat Dark Earth. I don't know if that should be Earth or Earth, but we'll go with Earth. $10. Thank you so much for that. Love Rebel Media, honest question. Why do you disparage millennials when you are more economically conservative than boomers? When they are more economically conservative than boomers. I'd rather have someone enforce gay marriage than a $20 trillion debt. Well, you know what? It would indeed be wrong to judge a group en masse by the actions of a percentage. But it just seems to me, and I mean, when we look upon stories that emanate from the press, regardless of their political stripes, so much is about millennials are upset about this or millennials are upset about that. I mean, one that comes to mind is, millennials are triggered by Friends. Do you remember that story? It was from a UK newspaper. And they thought that some of the themes that were in Friends, which to me is one of the most innocuous sitcoms ever, what's to get upset about? But they said there was homophobia, sexism, transphobia, and so there's always these trigger points, and so we call them as we see them. And I have to say too that a lot of millennials will weigh in the comment section, and they'll say, I'm a millennial. Oh God, please don't lump me in with the rest of this brethren. I'm not part of that. So good for you. But for some reason, this particular generation seems more sensitive, more triggered than those before it and those after it. I might be wrong, but this is what I'm interpreting by the stories that are out there. And we have a very generous super chat for $22 or 22 Norwegian kroner. Wow. What do you think that works out to in Canadian dollars? Norwegian kroner from Copa Dezoa. I hope I have pronounced your name right, Copa. I think Copa's right. And the chat is this: better be careful. Menzies, the MacBook may bite. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's the other way around, my friend, Copa. I think I'm about to bite this MacBook. It's frustrating me to no end. I don't know how Ezra can so dutifully multitask the way he does. And he'll be back on Friday, by the way. You only have one more day of me putting up with technical difficulties. So anyways, I see it is working again. And why don't we check out what's being said from David KTVER. Rempel has a social media presence. Scheer doesn't exist outside of the Parliament lunchroom. You know, I'm a fan of Rempel. I sure hope Scheer picks up his game. And I mean, the clock is ticking. But this capitulation yesterday over a tweet being condemned as racist when I don't see the racism in it, it's more spinelessness. Let's call it as we see it, eh, folks? So let's see what happens in the weeks and months to come. And let's see. Love Roscoe, wealthy white neighborhoods, even if they're black or Hispanic. That's right. Not sure what that means, but if you can fill me in, I'm happy to flesh that out. Let's go on. Okay, David Jeffrey Spetch again writes, a lot of people who you might think oppose the globalists at the same time are promoting globalist lies used to create war and divide. People need to wake up. Well, one step at a time. Let's wake up next year and have regime change in Ottawa, that's for sure. And from Tammy, again, we have Bernier should not have been kicked out. Scheer is a big baby. Well, I agree. I think it's tragic what happened with Bernier. And let's not forget, going back to the leadership convention, what were we talking about? I think it went to the 13th ballot between Bernier and Scheer. And we were talking about less than 1% in terms of the margin of victory. And I really wonder, folks, how things would have been different with Bernier in Scheer's position. I think it would have been for the better. You know, I know I've talked about that with Sheila Gunn-Reid. She thinks so too. And but it's a hypothetical question, and Scheer will get his chance next year. But like I said, please, Andrew, pick up your game already. I mean, I think there's been so many faux pas by this government, so many fiascos, that these are lob balls coming over home plate, just waiting to be hit out of the ballpark. And the guy is AWOL. I don't get it. If you want to be prime minister, this is not the approach to take. And Lupus writes, the plot to flood Europe with 200 million Africans by 2050. Well, you know what? I don't know if that is a plot, but certainly in terms of demographics, there are, I guess, millions of migrants in the European continent right now, if you added up all the countries. And then you just let, I guess, demographics do their stuff in terms of birth rates. And slowly but surely, you will see the profile of these nations change. And it's disturbing. And again, I guess just for us speaking about that, that's a measure of racism. Let's see. Love Roscoe says, the government supports welfare state, caliphate seekers and illegals to collapse nations. It's just that simple. If you don't think they believe their own rhetoric, do you? Ha ha ha, they all live in. And you know what? It is costing us. Right now, the cost, and it's increasing on a daily basis for Ontario alone, putting up with migrants, is 174 million. And as we discussed yesterday, a lot of those migrants are in hockey rinks that are out of service. They're in student dormitories that are out of service at least until the day after Labor Day. And the question arises, what happens when September comes and hockey players want to play hockey and students want to reside on campus? This is a real mess, folks. And from Observer Dude, £5. Thank you so much, Observer Dude, for your generosity. A few months ago, I nearly got kicked out of a pub just for mentioning Tommy Robinson. The owner threatened to kick me out. They got triggered so easily. You know, again, this is really a despicable new trend. We talked about this yesterday with people with MAGA hats, for example, or talking conservative politics, getting into Uber rides, and the driver just saying, get out of the car. And now here you, Observer Dude, getting out of a pub just for, and I'm assuming you were just talking about your having support for Tommy Robinson. You weren't, creating a commotion or a disturbance. I think that is despicable that you would be kicked out of a pub for doing that. And if you can, we're almost out of time. I see we're, right at the finish line, folks. But Observer Dude, if you can communicate tomorrow about the details of what led to you being kicked out and what the other pub patrons were saying when this happened, I would love to read that. I would love to know more about your story. Well, folks, that is it for Wednesday, July 18th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning into Battleground. I'll be here tomorrow. Ezra's back on Friday. And never forget, without risk, there can be no glory. Good afternoon.